Now we are going to talk about grants and business grants. And when I talk about grants, I'm really talking about business grants, grants for not-for-profits, grants for community groups or organisations. So if you are obviously a business owner, but also on a committee for a community group or whatever, the information is general enough that it covers that whole realm, depending on what organisation you are associated with. So in your workbooks, there are some questions to fill out, some notes to make as we go along if you wish. And as I say, it's all about grants. It's all I do these days. I did start out doing business coaching, strategy, business plans. There were a whole lot of grants that came up. My clients needed help to write the applications, then we were successful, and then it's really just evolved from there. And actually, if I go back about 5 years ago, I did a couple of years in a government agency where that just completely opened my eyes to grants even being available, people not knowing about them, and just opened my eyes to that world. And that's what I'm here today to talk to you about, to create and raise people's awareness that grants do exist. At the moment, there's 1,500 grants available in Australia, but that doesn't mean that there's 1,500 grants for your business or your organisation. So we need to get smart about where we're looking for them, what are we looking for, what are they going to help us with, and go from there. So I've been doing this for about 3 years, and it was only recently that somebody said, you never actually talk about what a grant is. And so this is all about going back to basics of what is a grant. And a grant is basically funding from an organisation, normally government, so in Australia, federal, state or your local council are the main grant providers. But there's also private ones, there's also philanthropic, and also corporate businesses will have community grants and other funding around. They don't need to be paid back like a business loan, which is a real misconception. So many people think, oh, I know I've got to pay it back. You don't. You do have to do some work for it and execute the project that you've applied for, but in terms of paying it back, you don't have to. So that's the first thing to differentiate between a grant and a business loan. My business is all about being grants ready. And what do I mean by that? It means when a grant comes out, more often than not, there's only about 4 to 5 weeks from it being opened to closure. We're already busy, we've already got too much going on, we've already got not enough people in our businesses or organisations if we're on a committee, and there's just too much to do already. So adding on a grant in a short amount of time just absolutely stresses the bejesus out of so many people. And that's why I do what I do. But in terms of being grants ready, that can mean a number of things. That can mean getting your business plan. Where is your business actually going? And I know today we've talked about value proposition, we've talked about creating content and stuff, but we haven't actually talked about where do we want to be in 6 to 12 months' time. What is it that we need in our business that could accelerate that growth? What's a piece of equipment we could purchase, an extra staff member, running another program, working with a community group? What are those projects that we could do if we had more money? And also think about the innovation. What are those projects that you just love to do, that if someone took away a little bit of that risk and gave you a little bit of a head start with some of the money, that's what I want you to start thinking about. And some businesses, there won't be any grants. And I'm really upfront about whether they are. When we are in a business, when it might just be us, we have our laptop, we run online, there's not much more we need. But that's when you're thinking about, well, who are my clients? How can grants help them? And is there something I can offer them that they could apply for a grant to access your services or what you do as well? So it's that whole ecosystem that the money's out there. If we're eligible to apply, we need to apply and we need to be aware of that. So that's what I mean when I say grants ready. But who's got a business plan? A document? 1, 2, few people? Who's got a growth strategy plan in terms of what is it that they're going to invest in? And that could be professional development, that could be training, could be equipment, depending on what you're doing. Who's got that wish list written down? A few of you? Yeah. Who's got their financials up to date? So yes, I'm a chartered accountant, which is very helpful when it comes to writing grants as well, because at the end of the day, we're asking for money, so we need to know what that money's for. We need to know what our budget of our project is, what is it we're going to purchase, who from, where are we getting our quotes from, who are we going to work with, all of those questions. And if we've got 4 weeks to write a grant application and you've got to come up with all of that, as well as run your normal business, it's pretty tough going. So that's what we need to be thinking about. If you're on zero, who's reconciling? A lot of grant applications these days are actually asking for you to attach your business plan, attach your updated financial statements or last year's financial statements. They're asking for your insurance documents. There's all those documents that we need to start creating a folder that says documents for the grants and having it all ready to go. And if we don't have it, start doing it. So your business plan, think of it like a job application. We're tweaking our application and our CV and our cover letter tailored for that job. So it's easier to tweak than start from scratch. So I've talked a little bit about what documents do I need to be grants ready. Now every grant is different, every business is different, but for every grant application there will be specific attachments we have to submit. And they've got really smart now, we need to put the grant application into the portal. So you've got to log in, have a password, all of those things. And if it says submit, attach a document, and it'll have a wee mandatory red star on it. If we don't attach a document, you won't be able to submit. So we need to make sure that we've done that preparation so that we're in the best position to even have a chance at applying in that short time frame. So you can just write down a few notes if you want to in terms of what I've talked about, what is a grant, and what you thought a grant was as well. Thinking about, do you have your business plan? Do you have your financial statements? Where are you up to with getting those in order? And also thinking about, what is it that I would ask for a grant? If there was a grant today for $10,000 that you could apply for something in your business, what is it that you could spend that money on? That's what I want you to think about. Has anyone got anything come to mind straight away, or is that just something no one's ever thought about? Sandra? What was that?
I want to do an app.
Oh, yep.
I want to do an app
Tech development, yep.
like Facebook, but not.
Yep. Cool. Anyone else? Paniotta, yes? Yep. Cool. Yep, you've got a good project. Anyone else? Cool. Awesome. Yep. Great. Yes. I was saying that to Sandy yesterday. Yeah, okay, staff. Yep. Cool. So when it comes to grants, as I said, there's 1,500 grants available at the moment, and they're all for different things. They're all for different areas. You might have to be in a certain location. You might have to be a certain business size. There's all those criteria. The government don't make it easy. Yes, they're giving away money. Yes, they're outsourcing, saying, well, actually, we think if we give this money away as grants, you're going to have a bigger impact on the outcome and not on the objectives rather than the government doing it. So we all know that, but at the same time, it becomes a competitive process. We never know how much the total pool of funding is. We don't know who else is applying. We don't know who's assessing. So again, like a job application, that grant application is your only chance at getting your project across to people that know nothing about you, nothing about your business, and nothing about your project. So we need to also learn how to write them in a way that going, well, actually this is the best project, so approve it and give us the money and let us do it for you. So that's really what it comes down to. So we need to be thinking outside the square, and I know some of you in the room, I've already had strategy sessions where, and we've talked a lot about this today, it's not the how we do it that people are interested in, it's the outcome that we're trying to achieve. What problem are we trying to solve? What's the outcome? And what is that program in the middle that makes us the best person for the job? And that's what you really need to be thinking about. Is it a workshop? And even thinking about your business, and I always use the example of a yoga teacher. There's a million yoga studios around. They're all relatively the same, But what your point of difference is how you communicate how you're going to feel after you've come to that particular yoga. bit like the government programs. What is it that's going to be so special, innovative, hitting the mark on your program that you're applying for when it comes to that grant? Because there's going to be a whole heap of other people applying as well. So that's where we've got to get smart. Who can we collaborate with? How can our programs create efficiencies in some other areas? I've got clients that run art workshops, so we're thinking about how can we tailor the messaging around them for improved mental health, improved community engagement, resilience. Who can we partner with in the not-for-profit space? You know, there's a lot of grants out there at the moment that are for community benefit, but the providers or the people that are going to apply have to be not-for-profits. It amazes me that the government thinks that that's the right approach when there are private businesses out there that could do that, but that's where your private business can partner with a not-for-profit, they make the application and you deliver the program. So thinking about who is already in your networks, and we've talked a lot about that today, who can you partner with to go, well, actually, with their skills, with their audience, with their workshops, combined, that could make a really good program. Just like we've come together today to deliver this workshop. You know, what have we done? We haven't just made it a 1-hour workshop, we've made it a whole day, a whole business breakthrough workshop for the benefit of business owners. So thinking about what problem are you trying to solve, what is it you're going to do, and what's that objective you're trying to achieve at the end of it with measurable outcomes. And then we've obviously got to overlay that with the criteria of the grants programs as well. So the next page in your workbook is just thinking about, what does my business actually do? And when it comes to grant writing, and yes, I see the irony that I'm a chartered accountant, didn't even do English at the end of my last year of school, and now I'm writing and reviewing documents. And it comes down to being able to be a good wordsmith, be able to be really articulate and concise, because all the grant applications will have certain questions, and then they'll say 50-word limit, and we could probably write 3,000 words on that particular question. So half the time it's not about getting the information, that can be a challenge as well, but then going, well, actually, I've only got 50 words, 500 words, 100 words to articulate exactly what I'm trying to say, and making sure we answer the question. Just like in an exam, just like in an assignment, answer the question. I have seen time and time again when I've worked with clients to get the information from them, we've gone through the application form and I said, well, what would you write for that? And it's got a 300-word limit on it. They've given me one sentence. I said, anything else? They're like, no, that's what we normally do when we write grant applications. And I was like, okay, this is why you haven't got them. And if there's a 300-word limit, I will be sure to be using 299 of relevant words to convey that. And if it says, what is the project? I start that with, this project is to purchase XYZ. The amount of grant applications, and I've been on the other side of it as well, assessing grants as well, they skip that. We're so far in our business, we're so far high level of what our project is, we've been thinking about it, dreaming about it for years, we forget to go back to basics. So when it comes to grants, it's actually about simple language, answering the question, assuming nothing, and going back to basics. And, I'll talk about this quickly now. When we're reviewing them, get someone that knows nothing about your business. If you've got a 15-year-old son, get him to read it. Doesn't matter, but does it make sense, and get them to relay back to you, well, what is my project about? And if they can't explain it, you need to go back and write it. But plain, simple language. So on that next page, thinking about, what is my business? In one sentence, what does my business do? And remember, these will be tailored for the grant application, I get that, but we do need to start somewhere about articulating succinctly in 10 words, what is our business? And you might say, well, actually, there's 4 different elements of my business, and so I have 4 different business descriptions. That's fine. But being able to write it in 10 words is really, really important. Same with your vision. Who's clear about your vision of your business? Again, you might say, well, actually, I've got a couple of visions. And a vision is slightly different to your value proposition, because your vision can be really high level, overarching. What am I all about? And they're leading to my purpose. So, today we've talked about who our target audience might be. And I had a client yesterday where they've produced a sports journal. And I said, well, who's your target audience? And she said 6 to 16-year-old kids. The idea being that they journal their sports achievements and everything like that. And I said, well, one, kids aren't going to go and buy that because they've got no money. But also, why don't you target some senior footy players first who happen to have kids as well, and they just idolise their parents and go, oh, well, Dad's got one, I'm going to do it too. And that was a complete mind shift where she's been focusing on the kids. And I was like, well, actually, and we're talking about grants specifically, thinking about, well, what if we ran parent workshops on kids' mindset, kids' involvement, all of that, resilience, all of that stuff, and they get a free journal. And thinking about that today, yes, your sessions and whatever you're selling, but what else can you tack it on to actually have a greater impact on a slightly different audience, so that you can then be thinking about how can it be linked to mental health? You know, when it comes to grants, it is about targeting what are the key topics at the moment. So some of them are energy efficiency. Some of them are mental health, community resilience, you know, trying to get back people's social connection after COVID. All of those things the governments are focusing on. So thinking about how can your business, woman empowerment, you know, yes, we're offering styling sessions and things like that, but again, what's the outcome? You know.
I had a really great, just you talking about the partnerships. So
Yep.
I was asked to working for inclusive fashion with a wonderful woman named Carol Taylor, who's created fashion for people in wheelchairs. And so Spinal Life and another company got the grant to pay for us to come and do the workshop.
Exactly, perfect example. So as for-profit businesses, or if you've got not-for-profits, or thinking about who can go and apply for a grant to work with you, and how you know, your networking, your events, you know, there sometimes are events. I mean, sometimes there's grants for everything at certain times. They're just not all at the same time. And a lot of the governments at the moment are now really stepping back and going, oh, whoopsie, we spent too much in COVID. We're going to stop a little bit. Recycling's a big thing. Sustainability, you know, you might be thinking, well, I've got nothing to do with sustainability. Your whole foods thing, waste, circular economy. If people can know how to cook at home, they are saving money, all of that stuff. So I urge you to think about what are these other facets that can be linked to your business, not meaning that you stray from your core offering, but who can we partner with? I've got clients that applied for a grant to do strategy and business coaching with me, 25 grand for 12 months, you know, and, you know, they approached me and said, so I helped them write the grant, and then I'm also now the recipient of it to work with them. But this is what it's all about, going, well, okay, well, if you've got a not-for-profit, how about you apply, I'll do the quote, you know, we'll do it as a partnership, have these agreements, but it all comes down to networking. It all comes down to who do you know? And also when we're trying to do something quickly, just on Friday, a grant's due tomorrow for a committee that I'm on. We were both working on the grant. A quote came through, it was way too much money. We're like, we can't attach this quote, it's not what we want. We haven't got time to go back to that supplier because it would have just been too much of a headache. I've now rung another colleague and said, hey, look, can you do a quote for this piece of work? We'll deal with it later once we get it. And she's done it for us. You know, so it is about being smart, tweaking around the edges, but it comes back to what's your plan, what's your project plan, what are those things you could be doing? So now that you've done that once, going, well, actually, if someone ever comes to us and says, what's a 12-month workshop program look like, you can say, yep, it's $25,000. They're like, cool, there's a $20,000 grant that we can apply for. Because this is the other thing, knowing how much things are going to cost. I've seen it before where there's been a $20,000 equipment grant. People are like, oh, I'm going to go and get this big piece of equipment that's going to create efficiencies. They have no idea how much it's going to cost. We start the grant writing process. They go and get a quote, and it's $80,000. And they're like, well, I don't have the cash for the shortfall. The grant's only $20,000. So you've got to make the call to go, well, can I get financing somewhere else? Can I apply and wait and see? Absolutely. But also, had they known it was $80,000 at the start, we probably wouldn't have even bothered considering that grant and not wasting our time. none of it is guaranteed. I've got an 85% success rate, but that's also not a guarantee just because I've written it, But I will work with you to go, well, actually, your project doesn't really align with these objectives, or we need another partner, or we need some other beef in there to make it the best project that we possibly can. So on that worksheet, it says, what does my business do in 50 words? So I want you to go home tonight and think of, and the thing is, when I'm running my grant applications, obviously I need to work with my clients because you've got the information about your business. I know I've done grants for businesses, I just have no idea what they do. I do now because I've done their grant applications, but I still need to extract that information from them. So we do a massive brainstorming, and to get that 50 words, we might start with a few different, what are all the elements of your business? And then pick out for this particular grant, what are those main things that we need to make sure that come across? What's relevant to what we are applying for this particular project? And then thinking about what are your business goals? I'm a big believer of grants are a bonus. We don't want to be operating our business, not-for-profits and community groups different, but for businesses, we don't want to be operating our businesses on grants. They are a bonus. But they're a great bonus to get if we can. So if you're ready, grant comes out, we apply, bingo. So we need to be thinking about what are our business goals and making sure that we're not swaying too far from our objectives and our own strategy, but that we can tweak around the edges. Because when it comes to grants, we put the application in, we might wait 3 to 6 months, even longer, till we know if we're successful or not. So we don't want to stall our business, and we also don't want to necessarily be like in a waiting game of like, oh, well, we can't do that until we know whether we've got that money or not. So that's why it sort of does need to be not a core part of your business, otherwise you'll just be waiting forever. Who knows what council area they are in? Yep, cool. So the governments are getting a little bit smarter on this. I know during COVID especially, obviously you register your business with your ABN number and with your address wherever, normally your home address. But they're recognising that you can only register once, and you might have 10 different elements. You might have 10 different stores, you might have 10 different pieces of your business across different areas. So you do just need to be able to prove that you do operate in that business. At the moment, I'm like, oh, do I change to Queensland? Do I stay in Victoria? I've actually got a sole trader and a company, so I'm actually going to change one and not the other, just to cover myself for what grants might come out. And knowing what state you're in, obviously, but there are a lot of state government grants that we should be looking at as well. So before we were talking about sales, and I offer a 20-minute free call for anyone that wants to talk about grants, which is fine, but it is really important that I can understand where they're at in their grants process. A lot of people don't know anything about grants. I have people ring and say, oh, some other business down the road got a grant, why can't I get one? And now that cost of living is going up, things are a little bit tighter, people are ringing up in desperation saying, Liz, I need a grant. And unfortunately, the government's tightened as well, so there are not many grants out there. But what's becoming apparent is that people don't necessarily have the strategy to guide them for the next steps of their business. So that's where we are doing those strategy sessions. Some people just simply want to know, where do I find a grant? Where can I search? So the best ones are, there are directories out there. So my first starting point is whatever state you are in, whether it be Business Victoria, Service New South Wales or Business Queensland, sign up to their subscriptions and their email alerts because you will get the emails. You still have to trawl through them and work out whether you're eligible or not. Sign up to your local council business emails as well, because they will be quite good around helping with letting you know whether there's local council ones, state ones and things like that. There's also the Grants Hub, which is the one we use for the searching that we do. I'm also listed on there as a grants writer, and talking about referrals and service sales and things today, I reckon probably, I don't know the numbers, but I'd say more than 50% of my inquiries come from that platform. It's only paid advertising I do to have that directory there. So Grants Hub, it is a paid subscription. I think it's about $200 a year. If you have the time to be searching for grants, you know, diarise it for an hour a week if it's something that you're interested in, or you can join our membership to, we'll do it for you. But those ones are really good. There's some really good resources on that one as well. There's also Grants Guru, Grants Ready. There's also the Australian federal grants as well. So just sign up for something. And we've talked a bit about this today in intuition. Now that we're talking about grants, I guarantee that over the next month or so, you will hear somebody talk about grants and you'll be like, oh, am I eligible? Can I go and have a look? You know, that's how it kind of works. I think I was saying to some ladies earlier, had a client, did a strategy session a couple of weeks ago. She's been talking about this program to go in and do meditation. She's a kinesiologist at the Cancer Centre for patients and their families. Again, her own lived experience. And she's like, but I need a grant to do it because, you know, no one's going to pay for it. And we did this strategy session that she'd held off for months and months and months. I said, well, just write the proposal. Let's get ready for this. Literally the next day, and I'm not even kidding, she sent me a message saying the local power station, their community grants had come out, and she's like, I'm going to apply for it. She sent me a message 2 days ago and said they're really excited for the project. It was $5,000, that's all she needs. She's made the application and we're waiting for that outcome. So it is a bit of put it out to the universe, but people don't know what they don't know. And that's my philosophy. I'm saying let's just jump on a call, let's have a chat, see where you're at. Some people do just want to go and look for grants themselves. Some people don't, they want to outsource it, they don't want anything to do with it. And then when a grant comes out, they just want to know that they're in the running. If we don't make the application, we definitely can't be in the running. I've had clients in the past where they're like, oh, I need you, Liz, they miss the deadlines because they get to the night before, they realise they haven't gone through the planning of what documents do I need. It's 11 o'clock the night before, they need 5 quotes and they've only got 2, they don't have a document, they don't have letters of support, all of that stuff that you need, and they decide it's too hard, I'm not doing it. And you've wasted all this time. You know, we're already too busy. We already do too much ourselves, and there's always a lot to do. So for some people, adding on a grant application without the guarantee that it's going to be a success is just too much. I've got other clients that are like, that I work with on a 12-monthly basis. I wrote 95% of a grant. It's actually a theatre company, community theatre company in Melbourne. We've worked together for 3 months now, and last week a grant came out. I rang him and said, oh, what project do you want to apply for this one? He told me. I said, right, I'll write it. Copied and pasted from the other 6 grant applications we've already done in the last 3 months. Sent it to him. We had a half-an-hour Zoom. There was a couple of sections where I said, oh, I need your artsy words. I'm not that arty to make that up. He said, yep. I copied and pasted into the submission portal, and away he went. He was like, oh, this is great. You know, he's signed on for another 12 months, even though none of the outcomes for the grants have come through, but he can see the value because he can go and do what he needs to do. And for him also, we're talking about partnerships, corporate sponsorships. So it's actually that whole funding strategy, not just focusing on grants. Once you do an application, you have that resource to then approach. You know, if the council don't have grants, you can go to the council and say, hey, I've got this really cool program, I think the women of our area would really benefit, and they might go and find some money. Or they might say, well, you can have the venue, we'll advertise it, we'll support you, and you might say, well, okay, that's subsidised, you know, and let's just have a go. The other thing with grants is they look more favourably if you've done stuff yourself beforehand, rather than just going, oh, I've started, can I have some money? So you want to be able to demonstrate that you've got the support, what you do works, and how it is actually going to be successful. And I know that sometimes there's a little bit of, you need the funds to do it and take that leap, but they also need that confirmation that they are trusting you with those funds to do what you've said you're going to do as well. Absolutely, yep. No, absolutely. So when you do your submission, you've obviously attached your budget, you've attached your quote. You don't have to normally use the quotes that you've attached. So if you, in the meantime, because sometimes it can be 3-6 months later, those quotes won't even be valid. More often than not, again, it's all about relationships. So you can go back to the quoter and go, hey, look, I know it's expired, but can you update it? And they, normally honour it. And then at the end of when you've done the project, you do an acquittal where you say, this is what we spent, send in your bank statement of the money spent, and then also you have to do an evaluation of what did you say you were going to do versus what you did do, what were the outcomes, and that's where you'll say, we had an event, 25 people came, this was our feedback, all of those things, and tick box. So yes, they do follow up. I do know that if you, for some reason, underspend, they legally cannot ask you for the money back. They'll try, but, Pardon?
What I kind of learned was that you can, because of the change of costs, and how sometimes quotes can change,
Yes.
they can go up, that you can factor in a percentage, it's like a 10 or 20%.
Yeah, sometimes. Recently with COVID, I just think with COVID, so pre-COVID they would allow you to add in a 10% contingency. That is gone. Now they're just trying to maximise, and they're also just saying, this is the fixed amount. If it costs any more, that's on you. So, and normally there's pretty good leeway to, if one quote went up and then you said, okay, well, I haven't got any extra funds, I've got my fixed budget, we're going to do less on catering or something that could be moved, they're not going to necessarily go, oh, well, you've underspent over there, it's a total. But yeah, note that if the costs do go up, and at the moment, I've got some building clients and stuff where they're like, the materials are going to go up, so when we got a couple of quotes at the start, we put the higher quote in. So, it's being smart about it as well. So what should you be searching for? So one, knowing what area you're in, what industry you're in, but also what areas, and as I've talked about, mental health, networking, women, all of those other topics and categories, that's what you should be looking out for as well. And not just, there's never going to be a grants program that is going to allow you to run a cooking workshop, as an example, as a grants program. But there will be a program that is about fostering social connection and improving community wellbeing and health and mental health. And you say, well, yes, I can do that. And it's my cooking workshop that's the vehicle to do it. So that's where the strategy comes in. And that's where a lot of people are like, you need to learn the skill of being able to read a grant application, a grant program criteria and say, can I apply? From a business point of view and from a project point of view, what I'm proposing to do. And that's what, I've got some clients that I've worked with over the years that they now write their own grants, which is fine, but they'll ring up and say, hey Liz, can we just have a quick 10-minute conversation to just double check that you think we're eligible from a business point of view and also from a project point of view, and then we might do a review at the end just to get that confidence. Working with large not-for-profit organisations, we did I think the other thing is there's a blurring of lines between what is truly a grant and what is a tender document. I've worked with a lot of, lately, a few consortiums where they're like, oh, we've got this grant. It's not a grant, it's a tender. One was for 40 million, one was for 20 million over 10 years, And I'm there as a support system in terms of, are we answering the question? I don't know the content. It was all health, and I was, there were 40 people in these Zoom sessions, and then the head guy's like, oh, Liz, what do you think about this? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Let's talk about that later. But it's that confidence to go, well, are we actually filling in the form properly? Because they're so focused on the content, making sure that the business model and everything is in there and everything was in the budget and all that detail. They just want that overarching confidence to go, yep, we've included everything, everything's the right attachment, all of that sort of stuff. And that's why getting your business plan, knowing where your insurance documents are, knowing where your incorporation, like your registration, your ABN certificate, all of that, save it as your business name and, in a file name, really easy, so that when you come to submitting it, you can just click the ones you need and go from there. But also when you're planning your projects, thinking about where's another project that someone's done something similar? Am I basing this on someone else's model somewhere else? And it could be an overseas example, it could be a much bigger scale. But if you can, say, well, this is where the inspiration came from, and be able to then include some of that as your supporting documents, that's what we need to be thinking about. Because sometimes I've done grants for, the value doesn't necessarily matter. I've done grants for $15,000 where we had to answer 4 questions, 300 words each, that was it. I've then done grants for $25,000 where we had to submit a 40-page document. So, that's why it is really hard, even when people ring me and say, oh, I need you to write this grant application, how much? Give me a ballpark figure. And I'm like, until I've looked at the grant program, the grant application, the guidelines, and had a chat to you with where you're at with your business. If you don't have a business plan and it says attach a business plan, we've either got to do one real quick or not be able to make the submission. So, and so there has been times when in a 4-week window I've done a business plan and a massive grant application as well. But, and then they've been successful because that was a way for them to accelerate their business. So in terms of tips and tricks to getting sorted with grants in your business, just think, how can I get grants ready? And it's all about knowing what your offer is, how we can tweak it, how can we put it into a program for the council, a workshop, for that extra outcome. Who can I partner with? How can I approach those people that you might be thinking, well, who are the types of not-for-profits that could also benefit from what you're doing? And that goes for everyone in the room. Because there's not-for-profits and community groups, sporting clubs, and also thinking, if you plan this out, don't wait for a grant. Have a go at running it yourself or approaching a sporting club or whoever to go, well, I'm happy to do this for free because I want to see if it works. Because then that's your demonstration when it comes to the grant application to go, well, we've actually tried this, it was oversubscribed, this was the outcomes, these were the testimonials, we know it works. That's much easier case to convey in a grant application than go, I've got this great idea, we think it'll work, it's $50,000, give us the money and we'll tell you later whether it works or not. So that's what we need to be thinking. Looking for grants. Grants are never going to come to you. So we need to be searching somewhere. Know where you're going to get that information from. Sign up to someone's newsletter, sign up to the state business groups, networking groups, but also start that conversation. Who here has ever received a grant for their business?
Oh,
yep.
not directly.
Yep. Yes. Yep. But yep. Yeah. Same. But you're aware of them. There are so many people. I have people who are in for-profit businesses like yourselves. They're like, they can't be anything for us, because they just don't know. But they also think, oh no, we've got to do this on our own. And yes, there is. I've got some people that will not apply for government grants because they don't want to be governed by, told what to do. And again, that's about understanding the process and understanding what it is our obligations really are. The government has no involvement in it. All they care about is that you've done what you said you were going to do, and if there's a media thing that they can be invited to so that they can publicise it, that's ultimately what they're really about. Yes?
I just remembered something that might be useful to anyone. There's 2 grants that I came across. I call them grants, but one of them, like for script writers, for example, if you've got an idea that you've
Yep.
already shown, potential to, and then choose it, they'll actually support you for a
Correct.
year.
Yes.
And so your finances will come by way
Absolutely. Yep.
of work. For
Yep.
you go into a contract, so they'll support you to help you write it and produce it. And,
Absolutely.
so I've come across those types of grants as well. They're not just
That, yes. And there might be some resources, there might be, there's business startup programs where it'll be a 12-week and you're giving your time, or they're giving you time, or whatever, or there's no cash.
One of the other things that happen, like sometimes with grants, like you were saying, the one that I got, it was a $5,000 grant, but I had to put 2.5 in.
Correct, yes, yep. Yep, so sometimes there are matching ones, sometimes it'll be 50-50, sometimes it will say, here's $5,000, but whatever we're giving it for, we know it's going to be 20, so by default you have to give your own funds. They also do that to make sure that people are committed. It's just like, if there's anyone in the room that is not GST registered, get GST registered, because nowadays that is a criteria only for the pure fact of the credibility of your business. During COVID, there were so many business grants, and you register your ABN and apply for a grant, write your name, money. That was during COVID. But now they have become more stricter around, more often than not, 99% of the time, you have to be GST registered to even apply. So that is just another consideration. And I know people go, oh, that's too much work. It's not when you know what you're doing and setting it up properly. So that's just my little, that is a tips and tricks to get sorted with your grants. If you're not GST registered, getting GST registered. And knowing so if you're a partnership, sometimes they're excluded from grant applications. If you're a trust, they're excluded from grant applications as well. So knowing what structure you have and having the right structure to even apply in the first place can be really important. Why do people miss out on grants? We've touched on some of those already today. They just run out of time. I do a fortnightly webinar where I go through my 7 steps of grant writing for success. Step 5 is writing. And people are like, oh, I normally just find the grant program, get the application form, start writing. No, we need to plan it out, plan it as a project, get those timeframes, work out who do we need to talk to, what do we need to get, what do we need to write, how much is involved in this? Are we writing 200 words per question, or are we writing 1,000 words? What is the comprehensiveness? Do we need a business plan? Do we need financial signed off? Do we need a forecast cash flow that has to be signed off by a chartered accountant? Do you need a statutory declaration? What is it that you need? Who are you going to get letters of support from? All of that takes time. All of that normally involves some external parties. So you can't complete the grants where you don't need any of that, and there are some, you can write them in a day, because you're just writing and you've got your own knowledge and information. But as soon as you need external documents, you need that time. Just this week, I've made a rule to myself that I'm not going to work with any new clients less than 2 weeks from the grant application closing period. If they're an existing client, or if I've worked with them in the past, it's much easier. But just having those rules in place, just because normally you need some of those external things, and at the end of the day, if we don't have them to submit, we miss out. They've got really smart. We can't email them late. We also can't blame computer issues and all that kind of stuff. So we need to be aiming to submit it a day or 2 before. Just had a client email before and was like, oh, I thought the grant was due today, but it's due tomorrow. I've got an extra day. So that doesn't normally happen. Normally it's the other way. But again, it just comes down to preparation and reading it and splitting it out. Sometimes a guideline document will be 25 pages and there'll be about 3 paragraphs that are actually relevant. Who can apply? What is it you want them to do? And what expenses can be included and excluded. I've had clients where we've gone and got letters of support from other businesses, and this particular one was an agricultural one, and the wine company were like, oh yeah, we're putting in our application, and they were giving us the letter of support. And I just said to my client, I said, why are they applying? It specifically says wine producers cannot apply. So it was the day before, so they just wasted their time, and then they wonder why they got notified 2 days after it closed that they were, it's a big cross. The government is looking for reasons to say no. So as soon as you don't have a document, as soon as you don't have full information, you'll get a big cross and you go on the no pile straight away. So that is where working with a grant writer or someone that's had experience in getting grants, there's a lot of people out there that think they're good at writing grants because they submit them. The important thing is, do they get approved? Are they writing the right things in that application to get it approved? to actually get that money into your bank account to do the project. People just simply run out of time. They overestimate it, what's involved. They get busy. Budgets, nobody can balance a budget. Or, you know, the portal might, like I had one yesterday where you had to individually do every line, and our original budget was like 20 lines, and I was like, I'm not doing that one by one. So, you know, we merged them. And then we also had some consortium members. We have 5, there was only space for 3, so I had to think, well, how are we going to incorporate the 5? And what I also find is people are just, and a little bit what we've talked about today, people are paralysed by doing the wrong thing. And if you don't give them the reassurance or the confidence that that is the right thing, just like we're talking about inviting them to come to something, same sort of thing. It's not that I'll review something, I might not have changed anything, but all of a sudden they feel better about it because someone with some knowledge has, you know, given them the confidence to go, oh, well, if Liz thinks it's all right, that's okay. But they just needed that little bit of a boost. And it is a confidence thing because we don't want to be wasting our time writing grants just for the sake of it because we've got better things to do. I was talking to a sporting club committee member the other day, and they went to a workshop a while ago where the guy said, every sporting club should be applying for 3 grants a week. And all of a sudden everyone in the room has just gone, we're all volunteers, where do you find them and how do we do that? My philosophy is know what your projects are, be searching for the right grants in the right place and being targeted about where we are putting our effort and our resources. And if another grant comes along that's slightly different, not saying don't apply for it, but you know, that's a bonus. That's a real bonus, and you can probably copy and paste into what you've already got. And I'm definitely seeing that from the clients that I'm working with as well. In terms of missing out, what else are they? Just not knowing what to write, and also not reading the question. So the old age thing of, oh, I'll just write this because that's what I feel comfortable writing about. And we do struggle to write quite positively about our own stuff as well. So getting a fresh perspective and getting someone else to extract that information out of you is a skill in itself, but that's the resource. You know, I've got clients that we do one comprehensive grant first, and now they struggled to write grants before that, and now they've gone and used that as a resource to go and write their own grants without me, which is fine. So it's knowing what to do, when to do it, and just being prepared and ready to go. So there is space there for you to write what actions you need to take after the session today in terms of grants. I will send out a follow-up email with the list of those directories that I've talked about. And there's a couple of bonus documents as well. I've just got there the business basics for grants. That information on there, business name, trading name, so knowing the difference. Because you might have you'll have one business name, but you might have multiple trading names, and depending on what grant you're applying for, might depend on what trading name you're using. Everyone should have an ABN number, hopefully. And the type of entity, so as I said before, partnerships and trusts normally are largely excluded from grant applications as well. Your business address, which is really important because some grants will have specific locations. So they're taking that off the postcode or that address. If you don't put the right address in, again, they'll automatically exclude you and say, well, you're not in the right area. Contact name and position, email and phone. So who is it that's going to fill out the grant, and who is it that's going to be able to answer the questions if somebody rings about that grant further down the track? What industry you're in, but also thinking about what categories are relevant to the business and the work that you do currently. And I think for all of you, there'd be at least 3 or 4 different opportunities in a slightly different area. Think of who else is in the room. How could you partner up with someone in the room for a slightly different tact? And thinking about health and wellbeing, women, business owners, your not-for-profits, and those charities as well. And it comes back to aligning values. You know, and when we do any partnership, we want to make sure that we're very clear about who is doing what, who's collecting the money, all of that sort of stuff. And also, if you do ever partner up with someone on a grant application, have some sort of agreement to say if this grant is successful, they will use you as the provider, especially if you've done all the work, but you need them as the not-for-profit or as the auspice, making sure that you're covering yourself so that it all goes smoothly. Knowing your annual revenue, now that's really important because nowadays they are putting a cap. So Queensland Government lately have been doing some grants for micro businesses, some for businesses that are between revenue of 300 and 600, and then recently there's some innovation ones that are larger grants, but you have to have a minimum of 5 staff and more than 600,000 of annual revenue in the last financial year. So 2 reasons why you need your financials up to date. 1, to know whether you're eligible. 3 actually. 2, to be able to attach them to your application if they require them. And 3, to know whether you can afford to pay extra or match some funding to even be eligible for the grant. Now, I do want to say though, because most grants take between, on average, 3 to 6 months to get approved, if, for example, you're applying for a $5,000 grant, but the project has to be $10,000, so you have to find $5,000. If you don't have that right now surplus, you've actually got 3 to 4, 5, 6 months to get that $5,000. So, you know, thinking about those opportunities, thinking, well, what else can I do in my business to generate that? Who can I partner with? But also not excluding yourself because you don't have the funds right now in your bank account. So it is being smart about those things. Knowing how many employees you've got, knowing what state you're in, and your local council. But also thinking about what other councils could you work with in your sort of local area. Some are really strict that they won't work with any businesses that are not registered in that council. And other ones, you know, they sort of might be 3 or 4 council areas that they're sort of okay with.
Can I add to that for a second?
Yep.
I discovered also recently through a Winchester Green Queensland function, and they were saying the people that were already receiving grants from them, like some of them because they filmed
Yes.
in a different state, that they could actually apply
Correct. Yeah.
grants from different states just because they're affiliated with it through that project.
Absolutely. So that's where these partnerships, relationships, all of that stuff, if you can get a confirmation to say, yes, we do work together to suffice that condition, then absolutely. But so I want to urge you to not think you're excluded. Also, don't want you to apply for grant applications you definitely are not eligible for. But if there's those ones that you're like, oh, well, how can I do that? The other thing is ring them. There'll be a contact number and email address and say, don't give away too much information, but just say, if we were to do this, or hypothetically, and sometimes they might not give you a definitive answer. Sometimes they might say, yes, you can apply, and you have to make that judgment yourself. But definitely call them or watch the webinar or whatever it might be. Thinking about your goals and your objectives, being able to write, what does your business do in 50 words? And I will send you my email address after this workshop, and if you do want to share them with me, you're more than welcome to, because we need an external person to be able to understand really clearly what it is your business does in relation to that grant application. Thinking about your values of your business, and that's really important when it comes down to the alignment of the objectives of the grant program as well. So sometimes there might be some oil and gas companies that are giving out community grants. Some committees that I'm on are like, no, we're not touching any oil and gas money because we are more about environmental and sustainability. So, you know, again, thinking about what are those values and are we okay with it if they were to give us money? And just to finish off, I've also shared with you my 7 steps to writing successful grant applications. I do run that as a fortnightly webinar. It's free and it's also on YouTube. So there's the QR code there as well. As you can probably tell, I can talk about grants all day, but it is just about creating that awareness that they are out there and what you can be eligible for. And the best thing to do is just jump on a call together and work out where you're at with your business, what have you done in the past, and what are some of those opportunities that we could be looking for. I know there's people in the room that we've done strategy calls for that exact purpose, really in-depth brainstorming to go, well, this is my core business and this is what I do, but what else? So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to... Sometimes, yeah. So the thing with grants is we never know when they're going to come out, and just because they came out last year doesn't mean they'll come out again this year. Sometimes they might, if you were successful last round, you might not be able to apply this round, but more often than not, if you were unsuccessful, they don't dictate that you can't apply again. They might say don't apply with the same project, but it just depends. But yeah, normally there's no... Not normally. Quite often if it's a rejection, you'll get a very generic, due to the overwhelming response, your application was unfortunately unsuccessful. Sometimes they will give an email address to ask for feedback. Again, I urge you to do that if you do want to, but otherwise they won't freely give you the feedback. But it's worth, if they give you a contact number, to give them a call. To see where you went wrong, or, you know, like I've reviewed clients' grant applications that they've done before we've been working together, and straight away I can see that they aren't articulating what they do properly in alignment with the objectives of what we're trying to do. So, yeah. Any other questions? Well, thank you. I hope you learned something, and I hope everyone goes and finds some grants they can apply for, and yeah, thank you.